is the price that we are paying for the international curriculum, is it really worth it?
I can't comment is it worth or not, but what I would say is, as a parent, are you happy with how your child is turning out to be and how they are able to express what they are learning?
To teach ABCD, do I have to pay 2 lakhs?
As a parent, you can also teach your alphabet to your child. It's a choice for the parents that you can send your child to a government school where you don't have to pay a penny.
How are schools preparing our children for that world which is not even yet developed?
Today's schools are majorly focusing on improving the skills rather than just the qualification.
By the time the children are out there in the market, what are those careers that gonna vanish completely?
A child with a growth mindset, a child with a resilience, a child with the inquisitive mind will be always required and will never go out of phase. How do they work around and then make a career out of that? There are many instances where the child shows a different themselves in front of the teachers or a different person in front of their friends and maybe a different personality altogether in front of their grandparents or their neighbors. So how do we identify that is only through
Strict parents raise amazing liars. So is that true?
I always tell the parent, you must be the most smartest person walking this earth, but the only people that can make fools out of you are your own children.
How is a school that charges 6 lakh per annum different from a school that charges 1 lakh per annum?
Good question.
Welcome to Yellow Slate Podcast. Joining us today is Mrs. Meghna, a visionary educator. She is a top 50 global teacher, a TEDx speaker, and a founder of Fountainhead Global School. Hello, Ms. Meghna.
Hi, Deepti.
As parents, we know there are so many different curriculums out there, and sometimes it actually gets confusing to try and choose a curriculum because at the end of the day, international curriculum is definitely expensive than when we talk about our Indian curriculum. So, is the price that we are paying for the international curriculum, is it really worth it?
I should not be a person to comment on it because international curriculum brought in so many changes in the education industry and at least broadened the thought process of the educators in how do you go about and do it. So when it comes to NEP 2020, the new education policy, or NCF, the national framework for the curriculums, most of the things were actually taken up from the best practices of international curriculums. Yes, they are expensive because the teachers to be qualified in those particular curriculums are difficult to find and it takes a certain amount of effort and all of that. See, there is a saying, right? Like, the more effort and experience that you put it, that is when you're going to call yourself a professional in that particular line. So not everybody can actually walk into an international school and become an international teacher, school teacher. There are a lot of checkpoints where everybody has to be very cautious about when they're handling children. They need certain certifications and all, and they all come at a price. So I can't comment is it worth or not, but what I would say is, as a parent, are you happy with how your child is turning out to be and what they're learning and how they are able to express what they're learning? So these things should matter as a parent.
Ma'am, yesterday there was a tweet from a parent about a nursery child's fee, which was more than 2 lakh. And the tweet says something in around, to teach ABCD, do I have to pay 2 lakhs? How do you justify this? Because you are on the other side of the table. We as parents have this question, but you, the person who runs a school, how do you justify the 2 lakhs?
Right. So you don't have to pay. If it is a question that you wanted to ask the entire world to know the answer, I feel that's not the right way to do so. Because when you know the answer, you're very, very well educated as a parent. You can also teach your alphabet to your child, right? And you can save up all that money, right? It's a choice for the parents that, you can send your child to a government school where you don't have to pay a penny, which is your right and your child's right as well. Like, free education from the government because you're paying taxes towards it. But how many of us are availing it is a question that we have to ask. And we have to ask the world as well. How many of you are actually availing this? So going to a private school and asking that question, I feel is unfair, because it's like going for shopping. You can even buy a t-shirt by the small shop, and you can even walk into a branded showroom and then get yourself better dress, right? But will we crib and cry about it? No, right? It is a choice that we make for ourselves. Similarly, when it comes to education, parents have a choice that they can choose from whichever school that they want to send their children to. And it is not mandatory that the child has to be sent to school when they were 3. It is mandatory only when the child is 6 years old or 7 year old is when it is mandatory that the child is sent to school. Until then, it is a choice of the parent where would they want to send the child to the school, or would they want to educate them in the house, is a choice. Again, in that choice, again, they can choose whether they want to send them to Nasser, or when they can send them to any other school which would only cost them a little lesser price. But going to a private school and then trying to put them out into everyone and then talking about it, like you buy an expensive bag, but will you crib and cry about it? But here you're talking about your child's future and their education, right? And if you think that you can't do a better job and they are able to do a better job teaching your child the alphabet, then it's a choice how much you want to pay for it. Right. So I feel it's not fair and targeting schools because of their fee structure. It's a choice that you can make, and there is no compulsion until the child is in class 1 that you have to send the child to school.
Ma'am, how is a school that charges 6 lakh per annum different from a school that charges 1 lakh per annum?
A good question. So there is a lot of things which are involved in this. For example, I can also give you how government schools won't be able to charge much or charge anything at all. So here in a government school, they are not buying the land and someone else is building. The government is building the infrastructure for them, and the government is paying salaries for the teachers. So will the government recruit anybody who is less qualified than a teacher? No. They are recruiting people who are qualified to be teaching, and they're also given proper teacher training program as well. And for us to send our children to this school will not cost us anything. It is zero, right? But when it comes to private schools, again, we have public schools and private schools. For public schools, some of these schools must have received land as a gift from the government. So to make sure that, there is that equity and equality in education where any child should be able to go to this particular school to get themselves educated on. There are completely private schools who will not get any benefit from the government, where they'll have to invest in land, the infrastructure, the teachers, and on top of it, give them world-class education. They all come at a price, right? So it is a choice that how much would you want your child to learn from that particular school is how you would approach that school. If you are able to do all of this for your child, you can as well save that money and sending the child to a school which is only charging you 1 lakh. The rest you can do it for yourself because you are well traveled, well educated, and then you're well aware of how things work around you, right? But if you think that you're a person who do not have enough time to do all of this and you expect the school to do so, then you're paying that price there. It is completely different, and their infrastructures are so different. The school which is charging 1 lakh, their infrastructure might be, they must have compromised on the infrastructure, are giving very good education per se, compared to the schools which are charging 6 lakhs, their infrastructure is amazing, so that it comes at a cost. So where do you want to see your child growing? Where do you want to see your child getting educated is what matters ultimately. Again, it is a choice with the parents again. Yeah.
Our children are going to next 10, 20 years, they're going to go out in the real world. They're probably going to go find jobs which probably do not exist now. How are schools preparing our children for that world, which is not even yet developed?
That's a valid question to ask, because all these years we knew education plays a major role in choosing a career or job opportunities or being even an entrepreneur for that matter. How do you skill yourself up? So today schools are majorly focusing on improving the skills rather than just the qualification, because that is the way forward when it comes to next generations, because the future is all going to be gig economy. That, nothing is going to last. You will not get into a job and retire in that particular job altogether. Rather, you will find people who would want to change their line of work within 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. We don't know. I also already know that there is a man who is an engineer, 40 years old, got so much interested in medical line and joined a medical school. Anything can happen. So the priorities can change, the way they look at life can change, and all of that. So there is nothing which is constant. The only thing which is constant is change.
Okay.
So how are schools equipping children with this is to build their skills in different areas. So the majorly soft skills, growth mindset, able to face challenges, problem solving skills. So these are certain skill sets that every school and education institution should focus mostly on, so that these children can face their unknown future without having much of a trouble.
Ma'am, as we see the AI coming up, we know for a matter of fact that we'll need doctors. As long as humans are going to live, we'll definitely need doctors. The other profession that was famous few years back is software engineer, coding. Now, the tools that are available, the AI is doing it, and we see a drastic decline in this career. Going forward, I'm talking about 10 years, 15 years, by the time the children are out there in the market, what are those careers that going to vanish completely? And is there anything that is a definite career, no matter any career vanishes or any career booms, this child will definitely find its place?
Oh, that's a very valid question, Deepti, for asking, because this must be a question on every parent's mind and every educator's mind as well. I don't say software engineers will vanish. Rather, they might be working at a doctor's hospital, helping them doing all these surgeries using robots and coding those robots to do the surgeries as well.
Okay.
Right? It's just the way that we try and actually use technology for the betterment of human life. So yes, there will be certain areas that can become obsolete in the coming years, but a child with a growth mindset, a child with the resilience, a child with the inquisitive mind will be always required and will never go out of ways how do they work around and then make a career out of that. Right? Many a times I ask, especially high school children, I ask them, what is that you want to become? Sometimes, being very honest, they'll say I don't know what I want to become, but I really want to earn lots and lots of money. So I sometimes I come back to them and I say, can you actually put a figure to that lots? Because lots is very generic.
Right.
Is there a specific amount of money, and then how is that going to help you? Then they'll start thinking, oh, how much money would I need as per today? And then, 10 years down the line, will this money makes any, what impact is it going to make and all of that? Then slowly we'll try and bring it down to the huge money is earned from the biggest problem solved. So how can you solve the biggest problem of the world without knowing how to solve small problems around you? So it all boils down to what can I do today, or what problem can I solve today, so that I can become a better problem solver for tomorrow. I think this is the way forward for education and for the next generations to be more positive about future. And these skills will definitely help them get better at what they are doing. Yeah.
Ma'am, they say as parents, we raise our children, but as teachers, they raise a generation. So, how do you feel that the teachers today are able to cope up with the new generation? And is there an X factor that a teacher needs to have?
Of course, and I'm very proud to be a teacher, and definitely vouch for all the teachers who have made such great changes with very little time during the pandemic to upskill themselves into technology as such. And the X factor for the teachers is how is that education going to help that particular child make their life better? So the subject that they're learning, how can they bring it to real-time application is what every teacher wants to help the child with. And with the help of technology these days, I'm sure majority of teachers were able to actually help their children with the way they approach toward the education has changed so much in the past few years when compared to past so many decades, I should say. Right? Like post-pandemic and pre-pandemic, because now information is at hand. It is up to the teacher how creative the teacher can become, and what all things that he or she would like to bring into their class to make it more relevant to what they want their children to learn about. So I think sky is the limit for all those teachers who they definitely, because somebody who's joined or who's in the line of teaching has that X factor. That's why they're able to survive.
Ma'am, when we hear today's teenagers or preteens, when they are trying to talk about the career, I hardly hear anybody telling me that they want to become a teacher. How can today's teachers actually bring the change on for them?
Right. So that's an amazing question. So it is all about how well the teacher is respected in the society makes a lot of difference in choosing that as a profession. So while we were growing up, not many private schools existed. So teaching was the last choice in the list of professions for many. So how can we encourage children? So whenever I ask, like, how many of you would like to become teachers? So they need to actually have a right example in front of them. So what is that they don't like in teachers is homework. This is most of the time what children tell me is, why is that you do not want? Because I don't want to give homeworks to students so that they feel stressed out. So somehow they feel that it is the teacher who's stressing them out. But always I help them understand how homeworks are the process of their learning process. So like, in the first 40 minutes, whenever they listen to a particular topic, how their brain thinks that, oh, I know it all. And then how that gets faded away over a few hours. Only with that little reiteration after you go home, that is, it's trying to get from the temporary memory into permanent memory. Then they understand, oh, homework is an integral part of me learning something. That's why. So always this generation wanted to understand how is that going to help them achieve better, learn better. So somehow, if we are not able to explain these processes and procedures, and at times, if the parent in the house is not very happy that the children are getting certain amount of homework, also discourages the child thinking that I don't want to be a teacher because I see my parents not happy with my teachers. So tomorrow I don't want others not to be happy with me too. So this is a discouraging point. How can we overcome this is, there will be certain things that you will not agree with a teacher, but you don't have to voice it in front of the children. We need amazing teachers to build an amazing country. So why not help the child become that amazing person so that they can give back to the society? So how can you do that? Take those things to the teacher as an adult to adult and have a conversation and figure out what they have done, why they have done the way they have done it. Than coming and talking it in front of the child saying that, oh, your school is always like this, or your teachers are always like this. They're asking us to buy something, get this project's done, that project's done. But for what? For the child to learn from. The projects are never for the parents. The projects are for the children. It is the parent who somehow feels that, I wanted my child's project should be outstanding.
Right.
So let me take up that entire thing onto my shoulders, and they end up doing the child's project. But we do not want the parent to do the project. The reason why the project is given is for the kinesthetic learner, the child is, they do the project. So that will help them learn this and get into their permanent memory on a longer run.
Right.
But you are trying to take away those experiences from the child, thinking that the child can make things messier. Okay, they'll throw the glue away, or they might not make the chat look very beautiful and all. That is not important. How much can the child put it back into their project, explain the project on their own, will tell you how much the child learned. So, and then how much more can they learn or add on to that particular given project. That is more important. I feel that, as adults, we stress ourselves and in turn pass on that stress to the children, next generations. Somehow, if we can actually break that chain and look at the positive side. So I have this mantra, which is 5:1 that I call.
Okay.
Yeah, where, before you complain once, say 5 good things about the same person.
Okay.
So that actually brought a lot of change amongst the thought process of the people around us.
Okay.
So amongst the children, we started it with kids.
Okay, can you say that again?
So it works like this. It's called 5:1 ratio. So usually children at school, when they're in 3rd and 4th classes, they would like to complain just to gain the attention of the teacher. It could be very small, simple thing. So the minute they come to my office, I would always show my hands and say like, I need to hear 5 good things before you complain once.
Okay.
So they will talk about that same person, 5 good things, because they need to observe that person. So then they will say, oh, this person actually helped me in this particular place, or this person helped me with my homework, or they helped me with when I got hurt, or whatever.
Yeah.
He was nice when we were playing something, or like he was kind to me. Then after 2 to 3 things, the child will start thinking, is it important to complain about this person when that other person is so good to me? So the thought process actually changes. And then they'll sometimes, after the third good thing or the fourth good thing, they'll slowly come and say, I don't want to complain, and then they'll leave. So it's a process that you have to put the child through to understand how correct is it to complain without actually like looking at all the better sides of that particular person. Similarly, I'll tell the teachers, if the parent is coming to you, ask them to list only 5 things that you have done for their child before they complain once. So this way it will try and reduce so much of stress on the parent or on the teacher when they are communicating with each other, because it is so easy to point fingers at each other, but it is very difficult to acknowledge the good that the people are doing to us. But once we acknowledge the good, automatically the stress levels come down, and then we feel much more calmer. And then as a human being, we have this attitude, it's okay.
Yeah.
This is for the betterment of my child that we are doing this, or the teacher or the school has asked us to do this. So this will help the child understand, oh, schooling is not a bad thing. So they will start respecting the teachers. They'll start respecting the process of learning. Then they will eventually have respect for that particular profession. So it is all in the hands of parents and the society, how well we respect a teacher, how well we appreciate the changes which are brought into the education system, will create that kind of, happy place for people who want to take up teaching as a profession.
It's really nice. So I really like the 5 by 1 mantra. And I think that's going to work for everyone, as individuals, us, as children, everyone.
Yeah. So many a times teachers came back and told me, ma'am, we have started using this with our husbands.
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of them complaining, today there is not enough salt in the curry,
Yeah.
they'll have to say, oh, you fixed my wardrobe. You made sure, you gave my purse to me when I forgot, and you got the groceries for this week. It's okay. There's just salt in the food. I don't want to complain.
That's an amazing thing. Ma'am, you were talking about how involved the teacher has to be in the student's life along with the parents. What are the differences that you see in the ideology between the schools and the parents, and how can they come together to raise an amazing child?
It's a beautiful bridging question, I should say, because many a times parents don't have a perspective on what they are looking from the school. So a questionnaire will definitely help the parent actually try and answer certain questions. So we framed 25 questions for the parent to try and give them that clarity on what they are looking at in a school, from the school. The schools are always upgrading themselves with their R&D departments, what will work for this generation, how much of them that, they can involve the child in that particular area and all of that. But sometimes schools don't have enough time to bring that research to the parent. So that is the gap that I most of the time see. So the parents' expectation from the school is very different to what the school is doing at times. So how can we bridge this is a try and, create these awareness, campaigns. And I would like to quote here that parents should take this seriously. So many a times if there is a request from the school saying that, we are doing this particular workshop, most of the parents don't attend those workshops. They always prioritize something else over that particular workshop. The simple example of a school orientation. How many parents would actually attend a school orientation? How many of them pay attention to the school orientation? They might always also say that, when we went to school, we never had an orientation. Why do I have to attend orientation every year is a question. Because every year, a lot of things are changing for your child at school. So what to expect from the school can also change. So when you're aware of it, you can actually keep all these discrepancies at a minimal level and try and, because, if we look at a parent and the teacher and the child, we can always relate ourselves to child as a little plant, and parent and teacher are two gardeners for that plant, taking care of it. And only when all of them are in the same space is when we will be able to make a better choice for that particular plant. But otherwise, if someone says, no, I'm going to, cut that plant, trim that plant, and other ones will say, no, I'm going to give it more supplements and all, will not work. So when to give those supplements, when to cut that plant, or when to grow that plant, take a combined decision, and always be more open with the school as parent will definitely help, because here sometimes I see the parent and the school are not on the same platform and they're always trying to fight with each other, will not help the child. So how can we overcome this is bring it to the school, sit and have a conversation, come out with the solution, and meticulously follow that solution for the child from the both ends.
Right.
Than always like saying, oh, this the school should have been done, or
Yeah.
this the parent should have been done.
Yeah.
That is not going to help the child at all. So many a times, take school meeting seriously, so that the parent understands how much the effort is the school is going to put in to help their child. It is not for anybody else, it's for your own child. And how will it help you? And schools should also have that open-mindedness to listen to what the parents' requirements are and how they will be able to follow some of them and can't follow some of them, and give them the reasons why they can't do it as well.
Right.
How it is not going to help the children in the larger picture. That will help the parent and also the school to come on to one particular platform, and they know we are the well-wishers for the next generation. So definitely the next generation is watching both of us. They're watching the school and they're watching
Right.
the parents as well. So it is, and they're very smart.
Right.
So if we don't come into the same platform and then work together, the child can manipulate both the school and also the parent, where the school and parent can never work in harmony. These are certain things which have happened many a times.
Okay.
They'll go back home and they'll say something which was not right in the school happened, just to get that kind of an expression from the parent.
Okay.
They'll come to school and blame the parents that why they haven't done their homework, because how the parent bed them up and locked them in the bathroom, which might not be true.
Right.
Right? So if this child says the parent has bed the child and locked them up in the bathroom, can go home and tell something super weird about the teacher too.
Right.
Right? So let us not improve that creativity in the child and those aspects. Rather, channelize those creativity in something very more meaningful when it comes to their education or upbringing. I think both we will do an amazing job as a school and as a parent.
There was a series recently called Adolescent, which literally shook most of the parents to the core, because the way it was projected, the parents had no clue. So have you seen anything like that? And as a psychologist especially, can you give us those tiny insights as parents? What can we look for? Do you know any certain signs?
Oh, yes. See, children are children, right?
Yeah.
They're not very good at covering up everything.
Exactly.
But we as an adult need to be more focused on things, the hints that we get from them. Many a times it so happens that if the child has done something, somehow parent takes that entire onus onto themselves, saying that my child can't do something like this, or I raised my child so well, they will never be able to do something like this. So even though parents who have seen this adolescence series, they think that it must have happened as a series, but my child will never do this. So that's a reality check that every parent has to go through. So there are many instances where the child shows a different themselves in front of the teachers, or a different person in front of their friends, and maybe a different personality altogether in front of their grandparents or their neighbors. So how do we identify that? Is only through observation. You don't have to be keenly observing them, but always have an eye on children, what they're doing, and then try to understand what must have triggered them to do something. I'll give you an example. In one scenario, there is this child very curious. Children are always curious.
Right.
So she brought in a flash drive to the class, because every class has a screen. She took permission from the teacher saying that, can I watch something on the screen? The teacher was like, wondering maybe it is related to the school that the child is trying to watch, because usually school screens are safe. They don't have to worry so much.
Right.
But teacher was not aware about the drive that the child actually brought into the class. So during that time is when she plugged in the drive, and the minute the drive was plugged in, the entire system got shut down. But before it got shut down, it actually threw certain things like saying because of this error or because of this content, it is shutting down. So when the parents were called, so when we checked with the child, what was in that? She says, I don't know, but My brother was looking at this, and when I tried to look at it, he didn't allow me. So I thought, let me bring it to school and I can see it. It's very naive way of a child thinking that, she wants to see what is in that particular flash drive. So when we figured out, it was all corrupted and it was adult stuff which was on that particular flash drive. And when we called the parents and saying that, this is something happened, we wanted you to know. The parents were absolutely in no way that they wanted to accept this. They say, we raised our children so well. We do so many times puja. We do all of this. There is nothing wrong the child has done. The child was only curious. But then, see, the child might be crying for some other reason and they didn't know what to blame. So they might be coming up certain, they're creative as well. And then many instances where these kids get influenced by the cartoons or the TV shows that they see. And then one day one child realizes that he thinks that he's Chota Bheem. And then there is this healthy child in his class and goes and hits that child for no reason. And when the child pushed, this kid falls down. For people to see, everybody thinks that this kid pushed that other child, Papam.
Yeah.
So this is where everybody starts feeling pity for this other kid who is not that healthy and then thinking that this healthy child is the villain there. But when you look into it, when I checked, then I asked okay, what triggered all of this? Then this other kid comes up and tells me, whatever, Chota Bheem, who is very healthy. So when I look at him, I get that feeling. So I wanted to somehow save my class from Kalia. And then I went and hit that child. Then when I asked this child, I was only trying to defend when he was hitting me. So I wanted to put him at a length. So I just did that and he fell. When parents were informed about it, they'll say, my child is such a friendly child. He'll never do something like this. So it's not about the child is not friendly. It's about what triggers the child. And how will you help the child when something like this triggers is very important. Because, the difference between virtual world and the real world blurs out for children at times. Many a times, children think that school is in a different world and house is in a different world. All that learning that they do in the school should only stay in the school. They won't even take it till the house.
Oh, that's interesting. So the other day when I was reading up, there's a math psychologist who was a math professor also. So he was telling me why of late the university students also are not really doing math the level that 10 years back they used to. So in the research, what he found out is they are better with video games because when they're playing a video game, the validation happens instantly. But wherein we're sitting and solving the problem, the validation is not happening. So the dopamine rush in the brain is not getting activated. So it is all so interlinked, but technology is here to stay. As parents, it is our duty how we need to navigate our children towards the right path.
So anything in excess is bad. Right? So continuous dopamine release is also very bad because that will exhaust the child and the child will feel lost within no time. Right? So when it comes to technology, definitely it is made in such a way that there is certain amount of dopamine that releases so that they feel like looking at it. Because, that is the trick behind any of the videos that children usually get hung on to watch for longer. But then as parents or as educators, we need to know and we need to actually sit with the children and have conversations on how certain things can be stopped, by when, where, and things like that. I won't say screens are always bad. I will not say they're amazing as well. But you should know when to start and when to stop as well. So because see, while we were growing up, at least we only had one television and there are not many screens as such and all of that. And then there were very limited programs over the weekend, and then there's one movie on a weekly basis and all of that. And then because we had so many power cuts, so we did not have too much of expectations on that particular screen that we had. Right? So we always were ready with some or the other indoor game when there is a power cut. We wouldn't be cursing that, why is there a power cut? Oh, power cut. Okay, let's try and play this game until the power comes back. And, under those candles, we would actually play certain games and all of that. So similarly, it is important for us to help these children have a free play. Because what I see is there is always guided play that most of these children are present with. So whatever they're watching, or they are not able to consume any of the content that they are watching. So it is only just at the surface level, and which is only releasing that dopamine, and that's it.
Okay.
So, but then when you help the child take a pause and have a conversation on what they have seen, what did they learn from that, what are the takeaways, where are they going to implement that. So then that also actually helps the child to put their brain to use, and kind of another rush to, oh, I can actually apply this somewhere here. That excitement will be there.
Yeah.
And then they will get to see, okay, when I applied, what is the end result like? Did it come in favor, against the, or whatever? So it is again figuring it out will also release a certain amount of dopamine, but after a certain amount of break. There is no constant dopamine there.
Right.
So there is a process which is involved before the dopamine is released. So this dopamine which is released after all these efforts is not that dangerous.
Right.
See, while we are growing up, people told us poison will kill you, right?
Yeah.
They never told so much ml poison will only kill you or anything. So anything related to poison, our parents never gave us poison.
Yeah.
Oh, small amounts of poison won't kill.
Yeah.
So this is okay to give the child small amounts of poison. They never did that. But
Absolutely.
similarly, the continuous dopamine acts like a poison for the child's brain. So if only parents are aware. See, this is all modern technology, right? We need to understand how much of it is good and how much of it is not good.
Yeah.
So then they become addicted after a particular time. Then the child is not eating food without a screen. The child doesn't want to look at you, doesn't want to conversate with you.
Right.
They're always in the screen. I also know some of the children, they don't like to come out of the screen time because they somehow feel in real time people have certain expectations, and if they are not met, they question. They don't like certain questioning. So only in virtual world they can do whatever they want, and people, they are validated in that particular thing. So they do not want to come out of that virtual world into real world. So it is important how much exposure can we give our children is in our own hand. So it is a choice whether while having their food, would you want to sing a song, or would you want to share a story, or would you want to tell them real-time facts about, family and friends to child to make it more interesting, or talk about the nutrition that it will help them grow bigger, better, is a choice that the parent can take, than saying, let us switch on the TV and everybody will sit in front of the television or the screen and then eat food. These are all something that we as adults are introducing it to children. Why blame children saying that, oh, they will not come off the screen? Have a certain discipline. I don't say rules, rather have a certain discipline that you are also following and your child is also following. When you're having a conversation, keep the screens away and have an eye contact with the child to have a conversation. Many a times I've always observed that parents might be cooking in the kitchen or maybe doing some work, and then from there they'll call out the child saying, come here, and then they will not turn up. Like 3 times, 4 times the parent will call, and the 5th time the parent will lose their, and then the yelling goes on. So how are you preparing the child's brain is very important, because if you are talking to the child very softly and helping them understand, comprehend whatever you're saying at a particular pace, that is enough for the child to learn from that pace.
Okay.
But it has become a regular thing that only when you yell is when the child is paying attention. So the brain is only getting that signal that I have to pay attention only when the voice is at this pitch.
Okay.
So it is again in your hands. But would it be possible if the child is actually going to school and can the teacher actually have that pitch throughout 40 minutes of her class? I don't think so. So how you train your child's brain is also in your hands. We always complain this generation have very low span of attention and all. It's a process that you'll have to put in an effort within your child. So to they increase that time. But how many of us are actually putting that effort is a question. So we always wanted to give them shortcuts. We always wanted to give them easy ways out. And we expect them to improve on their patience. How is that even possible? These two are so contradicting to each other.
Absolutely.
So ultimately, I feel the next generation, until they're 15, 16 years old, it's in the hands of the parents and the educators that we should be able to help them learn certain things in a certain way. See, communication is the key. So only through communication is what we're able to achieve. These days, I see there's a huge loss in communication.
Let's say the child is already 8, 9 years and the parent could not do anything, but suddenly realized that I need to get my child off the screen or off all these other things. Is it any time late for the parent to realize and start? And if not, what are the steps as a parent they can take for a child who's already addicted to screen?
An amazing question. And I think most of the parents are struggling in that particular zone these days. So if you think that, the child is already addicted to the screen and all of that, for example, we'll have to somehow look at this as an emergency, right?
Okay.
Like, if we know the child is sick,
Okay.
we won't leave the child there, right? We will take the child to the doctor. If there is an operation that has to be done, we will make sure that, all that is taken place. Similarly, how do you wean the child off from the gadgets is an effort that you will have to put in as a parent. So create, scenarios and situations where you are doing certain things with your child. Not only asking them put those screens away and not giving them another task. Maybe get them into some kind of a sport.
Okay.
Right? And then say this is the time where the coach would come, or they will go to the coach and then they will learn certain things and all of that. And then maybe immediately after that, you start to spend some time saying that, what is that you want to have conversations with. And the art of conversation is very important when in parenting. Reason behind that is most of the time when the child comes home, parents only ask questions than understanding what the experience is like, right? So I think art of conversation is something as parent, please learn. Today, how many of us are actually going for parenting sessions? Somehow every parent think that I know it all, or somehow they think that I don't know how to handle these kids. I don't know how other parents are doing this. So either any of these two. Both the scenarios, what would help is educate yourself as a parent. How do you handle your children as kids, as pre-teens, and as teens, and post-teens as well. So there are so many courses which are available for the parents to be able to upgrade themselves. Because this is a new generation, new environment altogether. You can't get enough help from your parents because the time that they were raising us were so different to today's timing. So, but there are a lot of amazing people who are doing work on this particular line, and they're coming up with what will work, what cannot work, and things like that. And they're publishing papers, they're publishing their work on all of this after a lot of research. So please join these sessions. Please try and understand, because your child is unique and you as a parent only will know how unique is your child. Than having these kind of expectations saying that my child can do everything and anything. Try and have those conversations. How much of it can the child do? Where is the child stuck? How can you add value into their life and help them learn better? It's okay. Sometimes parents come to me and tell me like, I can't speak Hindi. How can I help my child learning in Hindi? I tell them, this is your opportunity to learn Hindi so that your child will think that, learning doesn't have to have a certain timing and an age. Sometimes parents who come to the school say that because Telugu, they must have come from some other state, right? So I don't know Telugu. How can I help my child learn this particular language? So this is our opportunity as an adult to learn that another language so that children will take us as an example, and then they will put in hard work. Two ways of doing this is either the parent will come and say, because we can't speak in Hindi, I don't think I can help my child. The child thinks that as an adult, my parents came all this way without learning Hindi, so I don't have to learn. So this is how the child will perceive from their side when the parent says, I only don't know how to do this. What can I teach my child? So do not create those zones for children where you yourself are paving a path to escape. Take that as an opportunity. Oh, Hindi. Oh, I also struggle. But let us learn together. So you're not leaving any chances for the child. You're trying to create an environment where it is more conducive for the child also to put in those efforts to learn and build their resilience towards it. And then maybe, try and have those conversations and learn about it. And especially when it comes to math, as you rightly mentioned, my child can't do math. I mean, Every child is born with 9 intelligences when they were born, but they are all in different proportions. It is up to the parent, up to the adult to understand where those proportions are little lower, what practices that you will have to put in, so to make sure that those things can actually match up to the requirement of their particular age. See, they don't have to do a thesis in math as such, but certain basic
Right.
things requirement to that particular age should be good enough for the child to learn from.
Ma'am, lots of working parents feel a little guilty that they are not able to spend enough time with the children.
I know it's not only about the working parents. As parents, they always, because especially mothers being perfectionists, women, I should say, we always somehow feel that we take the onus onto ourselves and say that, I should have done even more or I should have done better. But, usually what happens is it is not just the working professionals, it's the parents. Always what I see is they get carried away because, they have certain things that they have to address at the office and they put in a lot of hours of work to be able to achieve it. But what can be done is think that for a 3-year project, how many hours of work that you're putting in? But your child is a 21-year project. How much time you have to allocate? So prioritizing is important. I do not say that, you will have to spend more time. Rather, I would suggest quality time would definitely help overcoming any of these guilt trips that as parents that they go through. It's not just about mothers, both mothers and fathers, both of them have equal role to play in any child's upbringing, right? It takes a village for a child to grow up is what people say. So how do a working parents like couple can actually contribute is maybe take shifts. Morning someone is spending enough time with the child, whereas that can be compensated with the other parent in the evenings. And maybe at dinner, everyone are coming together and like trying to do that. Always make sure that the people in your work will definitely understand when you have to say that you need that hour break to spend time with your child. They are not going to put a knife on your throat and say that, no, you'll have to work that 1 hour. Yes, so you can always take that one break and then somehow compensate it in another time, or like be more vigilant when you are actually taking out time for family and all of that. And over the weekends, as working parents, they'll also have to look at different things which are needed for the entire week. Involve the children as part of that. If you're going grocery shopping, take the children for grocery shopping. If you're cooking or you're cutting vegetables, you're fixing certain things to go into the fridge, like you're fixing their wardrobes and keeping all those clothes ready for the next 1 week. Involve the children. Do it together. So this way, you will not undergo so much of guilt trips in trying to achieve what you wanted with the children.
Ma'am, you are a Gen X. You have worked with Gen Y. You have raised a Gen Z. And now you're educating Gen Alpha. So you have literally seen all the generations. Is there one go-to formula or one must-do which has benefited all the generations put together?
There are few, I should say, but every generation is so different from each other. While I was growing up, I should say a generation gap was 30 years. Now that has shrunk to 7 years. So every 7 years, we have a new generation coming up. So if you look at the age between the parent and the child, so many generations they are different from each other. So parenting is becoming more and more challenging for every generation which is coming up. So, but what worked for all the generations, I have to put that into one or two things. Then one I will strongly recommend is the discipline that every generation is around the time that you choices of food to grow up healthy.
Is what
Very
you're saying.
simple things. And also communication, where you able to communicate so that there are disturbances between the child will be like, my parents, but they will never be able to look at things. And so communication, I should say. Formula, I don't know, but I'll strongly vote for to blame any generation enough, because I'm put in their hard work to their possible best. I don't want to blame any generation.
Ma'am, when you were talking about teens when they are other gender or mixed, now in today's, we hear so vapes, drugs available out in the open. The parents do not even, but the child.
Yes.
So as parents, we try and understand going through as children.
So we can teach our doing this is stand like, see, not get these things.
Yes.
So they were most of it. But now, and information difficult for the parent to do away from children. Educate our children is, so if you tell the child, when you see a pile of a pile of all good things. So child will automatically, similarly, when you go vaping, you will see intellectual conversations. This is how, if you can relate to them, I think, and also education, they have in their science any healthy eating, like meal and things like that as part of their books. How much of their personal life? And main reason is, but how much of it is something that we can all, it is not always that some child so much of joy and all of that stuff. Why is that you're helping you make the right choice? How do you help children make that is what the child always contemplate. Like you go to drink and then there is a ball somewhere. Then you can know, I'm so intrigued to, but at least I'm educated effects of a fizz drink. Would rather pick fruit, vocally, and then your kid is watching you. Even at that age, these adults are making choice. So I should let me fall. Health is wealth if it exists. So what of lungs? The carbon dioxide out of lungs can't do much of carbonized drink into us. How is our education in those right choices? Why use drinks? How is that going? Is something, if we can totally mention about it, the child will definitely
have your NGO and nature.
Yeah.
Have a TED talk on, and you were a speaker related to water. As how we a generation who care the nature than the
definitely. I think to my heart to India. Always something from my side. As an NGO, involved to try and understand sources and how to, as parents, I mean, we have to think this is aspect of their upbringing to introduce these things. A small project like it could be a small, you can start your gardening and understand gardening for your child. The child, the patience, curious to understand, it will pop out and what a vegetable that it is going, they'll have to wait and particular plant, and it has certain or a disease. So only helping the child to, but it is also helping a responsible being. Benefits of it is like when it is actually given further, when the child is more sentiment is when they're going, right? Because I say that, okay, for this world, we use sources. But what we earn a lot of money for our children to breathe, for them to safe, clean. How are we going to answer that particular parent has to remember on nature, and it is to actually do this particular nature around. Do and go ahead and send, rivers, and always start within our the small vessel, and then raise consciously. This is keep them occupied to make sure that they grow up beings. Like we have missions where we can actually children associate yourself with it. Automatically, like your children will. I have 2 daughters and I came to India. My daughters, like one is 19. They are very proudly say that, but I have 15 years of experience in particular work and actually secured a job in the what work she has done and all. So it build that so everything is in, not that they are away from us. That means it will other. To the Russia, the biggest 0.8, then affected. So if we discussions will not just, we're all part of it and being aware of your role in their upbringing.
Ma'am, we about giving faith. At the same discipline the child too. I mean, how do I know giving the freedom I am disciplining?
Okay. So mind the parents that and their guard, because you're guarding the child you want them to do at that. When you're guiding the child upon to themselves, this is something that I approved. Or is there certain changes that I have? They'll reach out to us. Especially where we able to, they somehow think is they go to bed early, only the cousins, or and they somehow feel that and I achieve without going to bed on a regular validation. Okay. Going to do any good. Wake up at a different time. Entire body clock. Don't do that certain things so that you know to do certain things. And wake up a little early so that body is rested, your brain is do more better work. Because of someone doing certain things of the comfort zone is not gonna. When it comes to teens, they want it let it be anything else and say that, oh, maybe I need to have a boyfriend, or these things. So how much and why children should know things, because their cortex is not right decisions in their life. Learn about themselves, understanding what they are, how these things are shaped. And then, because state, you can't take a accused being into your life experience. So try to understand why certain things, experience things only are. If you can have all these that will help children trying to say that, oh, this is not, you're not supposed to really want to do it, they'll do it without you knowing it. An open conversation with them, how where they can talk all with you, so that illusion that you come in your abide by it. So then strong rules on you're not loved of it for the children. Understand.
Ma'am, you can raise men who can care. What can schools do?
Oh, wow, school more. Because they as their projects years related alignment at every, because it will be a with the teachers, and then they can all come up together. Revived an entire rainwater lake, and we help children learn to solve the problem and the audit. So which act more than 2 lakh area and 9,000 on. So the impact at a larger scale is part of something like this is a huge potential to actually come forth sustainability as part of their so many projects we have sustainability area work in. So we work close sustainable SDGs.
It's amazing. And all the insights on parenting, parents especially, that is really nice. I'm definitely this one mantra. Thank you so much.
Me on this show and this conversation with you. Very rarely we get to, as school cautious on, but this is a great opportunity, more better audience. I hope this will looking for certain for with their children.
Thank you so much.
They all.